Thanks everyone for joining. This is our Protect Stage quarterly strategy Q&A session. Hopefully you had a chance to review the pre-recorded video and the slide deck ahead of time. The purpose of this meeting is to answer any questions or just have any discussion that you may want to have as a follow-on to that presentation. So Scott, looks like you've got the first few questions here.
Yeah, first of all, great job on the video, Sam and David, if he watches this later. It was informative, in the Q&A at the end answered two questions I would have asked, so nice work anticipating those. Also watched the video with Sam Kerr and how y'all envision the compliance and security orchestration user experience coming together, so really glad we're connecting the dots there. Also like how you identified a strategy to bridge to the different personas that we don't sort of naturally call on right now. That's a great step. Can you talk about how the current roadmap overlays or not with those bridge items called out on slide 9?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So up to this point, over the last 3 to 6 months since we did the Defend to Protect transition, we've really just been doing a lot of foundational work. First of all, we've been building up the team, getting the team at a good level of staffing. And secondly, we released the alert dashboard. We are doing a lot of foundational work to get security policies in place. So it's not really like showing up a whole lot for customers right now, but there's just a lot of architectural foundational components that need to happen. Also, we want to start scanning containers in production. Prior to doing that, we made the decision to switch from Claire and Clar over to Trivy. And again, a big part of that was where we wanted to head, which was scanning containers in production specifically. And so Trivy is much better suited to do that. They've got some other tools and other projects that are very closely related that make it fairly easy to get to run scans against the container images in production. So up to this point, we haven't been executing directly on that roadmap. We've more just been laying the groundwork to be able to be successful. We're actually reaching a turning point right about now where the work for Trivy is essentially done. We've got a few little outstanding things that we're cleaning up, but it's nearly there. We're researching the work for Starboard, which is the sister project to Trivy that lets us do that scanning in production. We're about to start the work on the UI for the security policy management for the scan component of that. So we're reaching that turning point now from like laying the foundation towards actually like delivering the things that will build that bridge, so to speak, metaphorically. When it comes to what is that bridge, I mean, those shared use cases are, scanning for vulnerabilities in production is a prime example of a shared use case because the AppSec team, they're really responsible for the vulnerabilities that exist in the code. And their job is to work back with development to get those remediated and get those addressed.
Okay.
Whereas the security operations team, they're just concerned with what's in production. And so that's the one of the areas where there is that overlap is, this is something that exists in production, so the SecOps team cares about it, and it also impacts the code. So it's different from like a firewall where there's no real code involved with those sorts of security decisions that like pure SecOps. There actually is overlap there. So that's one of the reasons why scanning containers in production is one of our top priorities. Roadmap wise, we're kicking off the research spike right now. Assuming it goes well and we do decide to stay with Starboard, I don't have an exact timeline on it because we haven't refined it all, but we're looking sometime this year probably to release that and have that out for customers. On the security policy management side, that's also a little bit of a different kind of a bridge, but recognizing that these security decisions are shared by both of the teams. And especially in terms of vulnerabilities, there's a lot of overlap. So we actually already have a security policy editor for network policies. Think of it as your production firewall. And what we're working to add in is policies that govern when scans are required to execute.
Okay.
And so by bringing those two things into the same UI, one, there's just a lot of natural awareness that happens because you're working in there and you see what's possible. It's going to facilitate those conversations where the AppSec team goes over and says, hey, did you know that GitLab has this network firewall here? Maybe we should consider using it. So hopefully that facilitates some introductions. And then, also anything around scanning and production, we want to leverage that policy editor for that. And again, that's a shared area of overlap. So it's a place where the two teams can come and start to collaborate. And hopefully we can start getting that SecOps team into GitLab, where right now they don't really use GitLab today. They don't have a reason to. So that should help us to build the bridge. And then the last component is the alert dashboard, which we already released. And at least right now, that's more of just an architectural underpinning because we don't have a lot of kinds of alerts that we can put in today. But as we build out that policy editor, the number of types of alerts is going to expand. So you can be alerted when a scan, finds X number of new critical vulnerabilities. That could generate an alert, right? Or when you find X number of critical vulnerabilities in production. And so, again, right now I would expect usage of it is fairly low because there's not a lot of alerts. It's more of an architectural foundation. But as we build on that over time, it's going to, all of these things are going to come together at some point to really just provide a lot of value to both of those teams.
Okay. You called out under security approvals, security policy management, and allow security policies to send alerts. Do you have a sense yet for who would do what in between the three teams as far as approvals, like who's approving and who's doing the work? Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, so the approvals are mostly focused on the AppSec team.
Okay.
Um, the AppSec team would be setting up those approvals, and they would be, because again, they're the ones who are responsible for the vulnerabilities in the code.
Yeah.
So really, what we're looking at for security approvals is rules that say, when the pipeline detects X number of new critical vulnerabilities, then I want to require approval. And typically the group that they want to require approval from is the AppSec team. That would be the group doing the approval. So it actually would be a blocking step in the developer's workflow where they submit the MR, and now it has this gate of an additional group that they have to go through to get that approval. We have that capability today. It's just not very granular. It's more of like a crude on-off switch that says if any vulnerabilities are found, then you require approval. So it's not specific by scanner, it's not specific by severity, and it's not specific by whether the vulnerabilities are newly found or not. So we want to bring all of that granularity in to make it more powerful, but largely that would be the AppSec team. I think there's a role in the future where the SecOps team starts to get involved and takes some interest there in terms of actually gating what can go into production. So it's similar scenario, but a slightly different kind of rule where they say, if you have more than 5 critical vulnerabilities, I don't want that automatically deploying into production full stop, and maybe they layer in and maybe they're not getting involved in as many cases or as many scenarios. So they have, the dial turned down a little bit, but if it doesn't meet a certain threshold, I've heard several customers express a desire to actually gate that and prevent it from going in production. So that'd be where the SecOps team would get involved is, not in the development process, but once it gets to the point where they're ready to push to production, then they would be interested in stepping in and taking some action there.
Got it. Thanks. So security policy management and alerts, the alerts dashboard, you would imagine AppSec would be the main user of those. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, thanks. We can move on to number 4. I was curious what the vision was for the Kanban style view of alerts. I took a quick look at that epic and it looks cool. So thank you for that.
Yeah, this is actually where we started our work when we did our designs. My designer started with a blank slate and just, we built it out. We did our solution validation around these designs as well. And we got some really great feedback. So just to share for the benefit of the recording and anyone who may be watching. This is really the direction that we're headed, or at least a rough idea of it, where we've got these column style swim lanes based off of the status. So that way you can actually see, what's already in review, what are other people working on, what's been confirmed as a problem, but maybe hasn't been resolved yet. And what's in this big pile of unreviewed things that I can pull from. And this would all be drag and droppable. So as you come in, you say, okay, I'm going to take a look at this one. You drag it over to in review. You click on it. You review the details, and then either you mark it as not something we need to worry about, and you just dismiss it, or you say this truly is a problem, and you move that into the confirmed state and begin actioning on the steps to resolve, whatever the problem is that initiated the alert.
Got it. Hey, is there interest in this in the incident management view and or compliance alerts?
So I don't, does compliance alerts have a separate alert UI?
Well, I don't think they do,
I
but
don't think they
per
do.
the
I
video
think
with
they
you and
would feed their
Sam,
alerts into here.
yeah.
So this is intended to be, all security and compliance alerts, and it is a separate UI from the monitor team's dashboard, which is very network operations focused. It's just a totally different persona, right? Those are alerts like my CPU utilization is high, or I'm out of memory on my clusters. Totally different team that actions those. When I talked with Sarah Waldner, interestingly, it sounded like she had done some research and they were pretty adverse to this kind of Kanban style view.
Okay.
So, it sounded like they were not interested in this view. So we are planning to just provide a toggle at the top, and this may be a good, place to do an experiment of sorts, and get some feedback, kind of A/B testing. We could, randomly alternate which one is the default, but we have the list view today, which we was fast and cheap and easy to implement. It's just a list, looks very similar to the monitor teams page. But at the top, we want to also provide this Kanban style view. So again, we can kind of play with that and get some feedback and maybe filter that into the monitor team in the future if they are interested, or if they really is no interest in that from the network operations center personas. I mean, that's fine too. And that's part of why we have two separate UIs, because we're dealing with two different groups of people.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sam.
Are there any other questions or just areas for discussion? Anything on the lines of protect? All right, well, thanks for the good questions, Scott. I appreciate it. It's a great dialogue, and feel free to reach out to me. If you don't have questions now and you think of some later, or if you're not comfortable bringing them up, I'm always happy to discuss individually as well. But thanks for joining today. Appreciate the attendance, and have a good week.
Thanks, Sam. Nice work. Have a good one.